All right, welcome. Drew, can you let me know if you're seeing my screen?
Sure.
Just
So I'm actually seeing the your notes screen and not the full slideshow.
okay. Let me try to switch that.
There we go.
All right. All right. Well, welcome to today's webinar. We appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to join us, and we hope that you find the next 60 minutes informative as you begin to learn about the new ESSA plan here in Illinois, as well as the quality framework in Illinois Empower. Over the course of the current month, this information has been shared out at 12 different locations across the state with superintendents. Many of these superintendents have requested that principals and other stakeholders be given access to the information. As a result, we've created today's presentation to provide you with baseline knowledge about Illinois' new ESSA plan, as well as the new research-based quality framework to purpose your school improvement efforts, and Illinois Empower, the new system of support available beginning in the 2018-2019 school year. I'm Susan Holmes, the Deputy Director for the Illinois Principals Association. I was involved with the development and delivery of the presentations to the superintendent. It's my pleasure to provide you with this overview today. Today's broadcast is being recorded and will be made available later this week. In addition, we will also make available a copy of today's slideshow. As time permits, at the end of the presentation, we may review some of the questions that may be entered in the chat box area. We intend to capture all of the questions entered and create an FAQ that will be posted in the next 2 weeks. Some of your questions do not yet have answers, and those questions will be forwarded to ISBE for response. We will include ISBE's responses in the FAQ document. The development of this training has been a collaborative effort of our state agency and our professional organizations. Not only was the work reviewed by the Illinois State Board of Education for accuracy, but our team was fortunate to include Sarah Bocek, General Counsel for IASA. Over the next hour or so, you will be introduced to the Illinois ESSA plan, as well as the research-based quality framework. We will spend much of our time together reviewing the new system of accountability, including a look at the new and revised subgroup determination, the academic and school quality indicators that will be measured to determine a tier designation for every public K-12 school in Illinois. We will also look at the state's new system of support entitled Illinois Empower. The goal of today's presentation is to provide you with a factual, broad overview of these new accountability and support systems. There are many answers under development by ISBE. IPA is currently developing a course on today's topics, which will be added to the Learning Library in EdLeaders Network by late spring. That course, which will provide professional development hours to participants, will be a resource for you to revisit this information, as well as an opportunity to assign the course to your teachers to help build their foundational knowledge. EdLeaders Network is an online professional development platform available free of charge to all Illinois public educators, as well as through a subscription service to educators outside the state. Illinois has aligned its ESSA plan to the vision of the whole child. Under No Child Left Behind, school and district performance was measured solely on student proficiency in math and English language arts. The Every Student Succeeds Act, signed by President Obama on December 10, 2015, reauthorized the 50-year-old Elementary and Secondary Educational Act, the nation's national education law and longstanding commitment to equal opportunity for all students. The new act shifted more local control to the states. As a result, ISBE undertook a year-long listening tour around the state to obtain vital feedback as it developed the plan we will discuss today. As schools begin planning for the new accountability framework, it is important that staff members have access to Illinois ESSA plan. In particular, Section 4 of the plan details much of the information shared with you today. We highly recommend that Section 4 be required reading and serve as the basis for discussion on the new accountability system and its application to your school. The plan is available on ISBE's website. You will see the specific address to the document on this slide. To put the new plan into perspective, let's take a moment to review a few milestones related to accountability. The No Child Left Behind Act was passed by Congress in 2001 and signed into law by President Bush in January 2002. The plan laddered student achievement over a 12-year period with an expected goal of having 100% of all students meet or exceed at their grade level by 2014. A number of Illinois stakeholder agencies and associations formed a partnership in 2012 to unite the education community and to develop a long-range blueprint for improving public education in Illinois. The work of this partnership has resulted in legislative change as well as a strong voice for positive rather than punitive school improvement. Between 2015 and 2016, the state assembled a committee to develop a balanced accountability measure and drafted its ESSA plan. Illinois' plan was approved by the Department of Education in 2017, allowing the state to pilot its new system of support, Illinois Empower, also in 2017. Illinois' ESSA plan is developed to move schools toward its long-term academic goals over a 15-year timeframe. These long-term academic goals target performance at 90% or higher with regard to third grade students reading at or above grade level, fifth grade students meeting or exceeding in math performance, ninth grade students on track to graduate with their cohort, and students graduating from high school ready for college and/or careers. This plan includes expected growth over a 15-year period using 3-year interim targets. Let's turn our attention first to the new research-based quality framework for Illinois school districts. The quality framework provides all schools in the state with a common language for school improvement. The components and accompanying rubric allow school leaders to focus on those best practices that will have a positive impact on their school environment. The framework will provide the structure around which professional development for schools can be built. Each school will have the ability to provide evidence of effectiveness that is specific to that building. Vision 2020 recognized that the most critical purpose of education systems is to continuously drive and create improvement so that all learners succeed. As a result, the desire to create a systems approach to continuous improvement became the emphasis for the balanced accountability model. It was determined that simply monitoring outcomes would never provide the clarity necessary to create an environment that would actually improve those outcomes. That improving the factors and conditions within the system was the most important. A group of stakeholders came together to develop this framework and its accompanying rubric so that school leaders could focus on the practices that are proven to lead to great schools. The quality framework is aligned with nationally recognized best practices and intended to provide continuity between the various structures within an educational system to determine progress. It's important to realize that the framework is designed around those practices and structures that currently exist in our schools. Let's take a brief look at the 7 standards and what we believe to be true of each of these guiding principles. With regard to Standard 1, continuous improvement, we know that in successful districts and schools, there is a collective commitment to collaboratively identify, plan, implement, monitor, evaluate, and communicate the changes necessary to continuously improve student learning. Standard 2 reflects the importance of a school's culture and climate. We know that in order to ensure desired results of improved teaching and learning, successful districts and schools must cultivate a safe and stabilized learning environment. Standard 3 captures the importance of shared leadership. In successful districts and schools, leaders create and sustain organizational direction, expectations, and a system that promotes excellence, efficiency, and leadership from within. Standard 4 focuses on the governance, management, and operations of a district. In successful districts and schools, efficient and effective governance policies and administrative procedures assure that personnel, fiscal resources, and data technology systems promote and support student performance and school effectiveness. Standard 5 draws attention to the importance of educator and employee quality. We know that in successful districts and schools, all personnel participate in processes of self-reflection, collaboration, and evaluation, which lead to professional growth and development in order to create and maintain a high-quality learning environment. Family and community engagement is the foundation for Standard 6. In successful districts and schools, stakeholders have significant opportunities to develop, implement, and plan parent involvement practices to ensure ongoing communication regarding student physical, social, emotional, behavioral, and academic growth. Student and learning development round out our set of standards. In successful districts and schools, curriculum, instruction, and assessment are monitored and adjusted systemically in response to data from multiple assessments of student learning, an examination of professional practices, and analysis of learning conditions to continuously improve student growth. A detailed rubric based on the standards has been designed to focus and drive your school improvement discussions, and planning has been developed. The final version of the tool will be published after the conclusion of this year's pilot process. The rubric will be required for the lowest performing schools in our state. However, this tool is extremely useful to all schools as you consider your performance and improvement goals under the new system of balanced accountability. This tool is not currently available in an online format, although that is under development, as is a decision on where the tool will exist, such as through IWAS. You might find this tool more beneficial and succinct as compared to the rising STAR instrument that many schools and districts used during the years of No Child Left Behind. As the new ESSA plan was written, it was important that tools be made available to schools to help them effectively monitor, measure, and improve the complex conditions that exist and change over time. The quality framework is aligned with nationally recognized best practices and intended to provide continuity between the various structures within an educational system to determine progress. We're going to shift now from talking about the quality framework to the new system of accountability and how schools will be measured. Remember that in the past, schools were measured using only student proficiency in grades 3 through 8 and 11th grade on math and English language. That single assessment did not adequately capture all that was good in our schools, and the result has contributed to a negative view of public education. Under the new accountability system, multiple measures are considered, including academic achievement, student growth, English learner growth to proficiency, as well as school quality and student success. As the plan evolved, 3 design principles served to drive the development: equity, support for schools, and recognition of local context. Before we move into the specific indicators, it's important to consider subgroups and how they are defined under ESSA. The first change you will notice is that the subgroup size has been reduced from 40 students to 20. In addition to the subgroups that existed under NCLB, there are several new subgroups as well, and an additional new redefined subgroup. Students with disabilities now also include students who have 504 plans. The new subgroup entitled Students Formerly with Disabilities will include students dismissed from services or those no longer with a 504 plan. These students will remain a part of this new subgroup for 4 years past dismissal. The other new subgroup, Former English Learners Dismissed from Services, will include all students dismissed from EL services up through graduation. Details have not yet been released about how these indicators will be tracked in SIS. We're going to look at the indicators that will lead to the school's single summative designation. As we begin to talk about the indicators, it's important that you think about each of these indicators as an opportunity to tell the story of the things that are happening in your school or district. This slide gives a visual representation to the core academic indicators that will be measured to make up 75% of your overall accountability score. There are 4 common academic indicators for all schools: English Language Arts Proficiency, Math Proficiency, Science Proficiency, English Learner Proficiency. In addition to these 4 indicators, ELA and Math Growth will factor in as a core academic indicator for elementary schools. Graduation rate will factor in as the core academic indicator for high schools. We'll discuss these indicators in more detail as the presentation progresses. In addition to academic core indicators, 2 success indicators, chronic absenteeism and climate, will be included in the school's overall picture. Fine arts is also a possible indicator that is currently being studied. Quality indicators for high schools will include 9th graders on track and college and career readiness. 2 additional elementary indicators, a P2 indicator and an elementary middle grades indicator, are also currently under development. The pie charts shown on this screen give a visual representation of the weighting of indicators for the 2018-2019 school year. Note that a number of indicators for both the elementary and high school levels do not yet factor into the overall performance. These charts show the significant value that ELA and Math Growth represent at the elementary level and that graduation rate represents at the high school level. The green pie slices help illustrate how the academic indicators make up 75% of the overall performance of a school. Those slides shown in orange, blue, or red make up the 25% measure of student success and school quality. This second set of pie charts represents how performance will be evaluated in the following school year. It's important to note that many of the indicators that were excluded from 2018-2019 have now been factored in. The weight of a number of indicators has changed to mathematically allow for the additional indicators to be included. For example, math and ELA proficiency have each decreased from 10% to 7.5% to allow for the inclusion of the science proficiency. At the elementary level, chronic absenteeism has been reduced from 20% to 10% to allow for the inclusion of both the P2 and elementary middle grades indicators. Now that we have explored the weighting of the indicators, let's take a few minutes to unpack each indicator by looking at the data that will be used to measure a school's performance relative to each. To measure academic achievement in English language arts and math, ISBE will utilize PARCC, SAT, and the Dynamic Learning Maps alternate assessment. For the 2018-19 testing year, PARCC will be replaced by a similar assessment negotiated by ISBE. It is expected that the new assessment will have comparability to ensure continuity in determining growth in coming years. Those details are still being developed by ISBE. You will notice in the lower left-hand corner of this and each subsequent slide a small chart that reflects the value of the indicator in the overall accountability score for the 2018-19 and 2019-2020 school year. For academic achievement, for example, math and English language arts each represent 10% of a school's overall accountability measure in the 18-19 school year, and then represent 7.5% in subsequent years. English learning proficiency will be measured using the Access 2.0 assessment and will represent 5% of a school's overall accountability score. English learners must make annual progress towards the composite score of 4.8 or above on Access 2.0 within 5 years. A student's measure toward proficiency is based individually on their entry-level performance. A student is making progress provided that they score at or above their interim target. If a school does not have an English learner subgroup, the indicator will not be factored into the overall accountability score. In other words, a school is neither harmed nor helped by the lack of data for an EL indicator. The measure of academic achievement for science is the Illinois Science Assessment, along with the DLM, for students with profound cognitive disabilities. The ISA will be replaced by a new science assessment that will be developed by a contract with ISBE. It is expected that the new science assessment will also be administered in an online format and will align to the Illinois adopted next generation science standards. Currently, ISBE is planning to use simple linear regression, whereby the current year's test scores are regressed on the previous year's scores to determine a school's growth score. ISBE has supported the recommendations of its Technical Steering Committee on Student Growth and will run additional statistical treatments on the data to reflect appropriate growth targets as work continues on the model, given the requirement that each elementary school is expected to receive a letter grade on the Illinois report card based on growth performance. It should be noted that high schools will not receive a grade letter designation, as no growth metric currently exists for high schools. Dr. John Gatta of the ECRA Group has developed a 10-minute video that details what is currently known about the regression model under development. We encourage you, after this webinar, to watch this introduction to the model and share it with your staff. In State Superintendent Tony Smith's recent letter, he identified a number of goals that will be incorporated into the RFP for new state assessments, including returning results more quickly, building assessments from the ground up in more languages, measuring growth in high school, reporting results on a common scale across all assessments, reaching full online assessment, and transitioning to a computer adaptive format. In place of student growth at the high school level is graduation rate. The graduation rate indicator represents 50% of a high school's overall accountability measure. The graduation rate indicator is the combined measure of a school's 4-year, 5-year, and 6-year cohort data, as shown here. The formula for calculating the graduation rate has not yet been published, so it is unclear how some factors such as mobility will be considered. In defining chronic absenteeism for the new accountability system, the state adopted the definition from the publication Attendance Matters. A chronically absent student will be one who misses 10% or more of a school year for excused or unexcused reasons. The only exceptions are for medically certified home hospital instruction and absences pertaining to the death of a family member. The school climate indicator will be comprised of an analysis of the student voice on the 5 Essentials survey. The 5 Essentials survey will expand to include students in grades 4 through 12. As has been the case in recent years, schools may use an alternate assessment at their own expense from a list approved by the state superintendent. ISBE and stakeholder groups recognize the importance of the arts for our students. Over the next few years, stakeholders will consider how to accurately identify and measure a fine arts indicator for schools. A committee worked over the past months to identify an indicator for P2 to reflect the importance of effective early learning. The committee did not reach a consensus on a single measure, but has proposed that K2 chronic absenteeism and services for K2 dual language learners be factored in. A public comment window recently closed on these recommendations, and it is expected that ISBE will vote on the final recommendation at an upcoming board meeting. It's important to note, however, that the P2 indicator group will continue working in the 2018-2019 school year to develop a P2 indicator that may look different in the future. ISBE agrees with stakeholders that learning in elementary and middle grades is critical to long-term success, and identifying including an indicator as part of the accountability systems will ensure recognition of its importance. Much like the P2 indicator, the 3-8 indicator stakeholder group has currently recommended that the full 5% weight be applied to chronic absenteeism, with future development of how to address acceleration, enrichment, and career exploration. The ISBE board will also vote on this recommendation at an upcoming board meeting. The 9th grade on-track indicator identifies students as on track if they earn at least 5 full-year course credits and no more than 1 semester F in a core course in their first year of high school. The College and Career Readiness Indicator allows students to meet the criteria in one of 3 different ways: through recognition as a distinguished scholar or via 2 college and career options. To qualify as a distinguished scholar, a student must have earned at least a 3.75 on a 4-point grading scale, receive at least a 1400 on the SAT, successfully complete at least 1 English language arts and 1 math academic indicator, complete at least 3 career ready indicators, and maintain 95% attendance in his or her junior and senior years. The academic and career ready indicators will be further described in subsequent slides. Removal of the original ACT score option was presented to ISBE in January and will be voted on later this spring. To qualify as college and career ready, a student may meet the requirement via 2 different options. The option displayed on this page would require the student to earn at least a 2.8 on a 4-point grading scale, maintain 95% attendance in his or her junior and senior year, and complete the requirements for a college and career pathway endorsement. A student may also meet the requirement by earning at least a 2.8 on a 4-point grading scale, successfully complete at least 1 English language arts and 1 math academic indicator, complete at least 3 career ready indicators, maintain 95% attendance in his or her junior and senior year, and identify a career area of interest by the end of their sophomore year. The academic and career-ready indicators referenced in the previous slides are shown further defined here. The text in red shows the changes that were recommended by a steering committee, accepted by ISBE, and posted for public comment in January. ISBE is expected to take a vote on a final version at an upcoming board meeting. Students who choose the path of Distinguished Scholar or College and Career Ready without a pathway endorsement must complete at least one ELA and one math academic indicator, as well as 3 Career Ready indicators from the lists shown here. No guidance has been provided at this time regarding how schools will track or report this data. Now that we have talked about accountability indicators and the data that will be used for measurement, we need to turn our attention to tier designations. Based on the analysis of performance regarding each indicator, each school will receive a tier designation. To reiterate, the designation will be made by school and not by district. A district comprised of one school will have a designation for that school. A district comprised of 10 schools will have 10 designations, one for each school. In determining a summative tier designation for each school, it's important to understand that the analysis starts with a review of the performance of each subgroup at each grade level for each indicator. Following this review, a summative designation for each subgroup is determined. Once these subgroup designations are finalized, an overall summative designation for the school is made. The school will be identified with a Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3, or Tier 4 designation. Each school, as mentioned a minute ago, will be placed in one of 4 tiers. As you can see, Tier 1 schools are those that have no underperforming subgroups, have a graduation rate greater than 67%, and perform in the top 10% of schools in the state. These schools are considered exemplary. Tier 2 schools meet the same criteria as Tier 1, but are not in the top 10% of schools in the state. Illinois refers to these schools as commendable. Let's pause for a moment to consider the definition of an underperforming subgroup. The state has defined an underperforming subgroup as one in which the students are performing at or below the level of the all students group in the lowest 5% of Title I schools in Illinois. Until ISBE runs all of the calculations, the level of the all students group in the lowest 5% will not be known. To further clarify, you may have a subgroup whose performance is lower than your own all students performance, but if your subgroup's performance is higher than the all students group of the lowest 5% of schools, you can still qualify for Tier 1 or Tier 2 status. Schools that fall into Tier 3 are labeled underperforming, Schools that fall into Tier 3 are labeled underperforming and have one or more subgroups that perform at or below the level of the all students group in the lowest 5% of Title I schools. Finally, a school that is in Tier 4 is a school that is in the lowest performing 5% of Title I schools in Illinois, or is a high school with a graduation rate of 67% or less. It's important to remember that if a school does not have a 95% participation rate in total and for each student demographic group, it cannot receive the highest summative rating. The following flowchart is a resource to help guide your thinking as you consider the tier designation that will apply to your school and the level of support that may or may not be required for your school. Tier designation status also determines determines which schools must receive support through ISBE's new system of support known as Illinois Empower. Tier 4 schools will be required to participate in comprehensive school improvement using the Illinois Empower network. ISBE has already selected approximately 30 approved partners that districts may consider. Additional partners will be identified in the coming months through an RFP process with ISBE. Tier 3 schools may participate in the Illinois Empower network to receive targeted support. Tier 1 and 2 schools, in addition to being able to participate with the Illinois Empower network, may also apply to be Illinois Empower partners for schools identified as Tier 3 or Tier 4. This offers a way for schools to partner with like schools who have had success in meeting the needs of students. Let's take a little deeper look at the new Illinois Empower system of support. The model of school improvement is shifting in Illinois. Gone are the days of documenting for hours and hours using the Rising Star framework. We're excited about the Illinois Empower system of support for our schools. There are 4 core values that serve as the basis for Illinois Empower: whole child, whole school, whole community, and equity. This underscores the vision of Illinois' ESSA plan. As the statewide system of support to help all districts and schools improve, Illinois Empower will provide the structure through which schools will be able to select an Illinois Empower professional learning partner and receive services. Illinois Empower is available to all schools. Those schools that wish to use Illinois Empower services are required to complete a needs assessment equity audit in order to identify areas in need of support, as well as develop an improvement plan with targets and a timeline. Let's take a closer look at those schools that are receiving targeted and comprehensive support under ESSA. As a brief review, a Tier 3 targeted school is one in which one or more subgroups is performing at or below the level of the all students group in the lowest 5% of Title I schools. If the school failed to meet a 95% assessment participation rate in any subgroup for 3 straight years, it will also be considered Tier 3. A Tier 3 school must complete the needs assessment and write a school improvement plan which is approved by its local Board of Education. Tier 3 schools may work with Illinois Empower learning partners, but are not required to do so. A school may exit Tier 3 requirements before the end of a 3-year cycle if they no longer meet the eligibility criteria, have established a growth trajectory for any subgroups who are underperforming to bring them in alignment with the state's long-term goals, and who has a strong plan for sustainability of progress that has been made. A Tier 4 comprehensive school is a school that is performing in the lowest 5% of Title I schools statewide, or a high school that has a graduation rate below 67%. Notice that the composite average will begin with 2016 as the baseline data year. A Tier 4 school must complete the needs assessment and write a school improvement plan which is approved by ISBE. Tier 4 schools must work with approved Illinois Empower learning partners. Schools are reassessed after 3 years, but may take 1 year for planning as Illinois' ESSA plan begins in 2018-2019. A school may exit Tier 4 requirements before the end of the 3-year cycle if they no longer meet the eligibility criteria, have established a growth trajectory for any subgroups who are underperforming to bring them in alignment with the state's long-term goals, and who has a strong plan for sustainability of progress that has been made. ISBE will monitor progress through the submission of quarterly reports that provide data on progress in achieving identified targets, as well as utilizing field-based staff who can, if necessary, provide technical assistance and monitor for compliance. Schools that are not making reasonable progress will work directly with ISBE to determine additional interventions. This year marks dramatic changes in funding and accountability for schools. To validate the importance and value of the new equity-based funding formula, it will be necessary and expected for schools to show progress. Without this progress, continued investments in the new funding formula are at risk. It's up to us to focus on what we can do to make sure our students grow and learn and do more than we ever have before. I've included a number of valuable links in the handout as you expand your understanding of Illinois' ESSA plan. We have a few minutes for some of the many questions that I'm sure that you have. If I'm not able to answer your question during our time together, please know that we are gathering those questions and we'll be placing them in an FAQ document and certainly provide you access to that document. Remember that many of the questions that you may have today just certainly don't have answers to them. We've been collecting questions as we've gone around the state, presenting this information to superintendents and forwarding those questions on to the state board so that the state board can respond to those questions and help us get accurate information out to our groups. So at this point, I'm going to ask Drew to, I'm going to take a look at the questions that my partner here, Drew, has hopefully been able to capture for me. See if I can get them. Thanks for your patience. All right, Drew, I may need some technical assistance because the questions are not popping out for me.
Okay, I'll be right there.
Thanks for your understanding. One of the questions I can see is, when will the quality framework rubric be published? There is a version of the rubric available now, and I will include that as a handout with the follow-up for this session. And a few other questions. The handouts won't download. We will send them to attendees, so I'll include the PowerPoint handout as well as the rubric in our follow-up. Arlen Peebles, who is usually our tech support person on these webinars, is actually up at the ICE conference presenting, so when he gets back, we'll have this recorded and uploaded along with those handouts. Did you say the new state test is in 2018, 2019, or 1920? It is our understanding that the new test will be delivered in 2018, 2019, so this next school year. The current contract with Park expired this year, so in 2018. And where can I find a list of the Illinois Empower partners? You will find that list on that resource slide that I was able to share. So if you refer back to that, you'll be able to see that list of partners. The interesting thing about the partners, just to kind of let you know, is as folks have applied to be partners, they have needed to identify the areas based on the quality framework to which they might be able to provide services. So as an example, the Illinois Principals Association is an approved provider to help with school leadership. So as you go through the rubric and take a look at the standards and you identify those areas that you want to focus on, you'll be able to find partners that can really help you hone in on those specific areas that you'd like to work on. what might the timeline look like for the selection of Illinois Empower partners? That I don't have a good answer for, but I will be glad to send that to ISBE. I know that they had released recently a new rubric for additional partners to look to apply. So I don't know what their timeline is currently for when they will make a determination on that. Next question, will the updated graduation rate account for students with disabilities? Kelly, that's an excellent question. And that's a question that we've been getting from the superintendents, as you can imagine. Those of us that are concerned about how that may weigh in have asked for clarification on that, because as you know, those of you that are listening, students in high school with IEPs have the opportunity, if that is what's right for them, to stay enrolled until the day before their 22nd birthday. And so some of the concerns are that those students who have a legal right to stay in school would somehow be counted against the graduation rate. So we are waiting for clarification on that. Max, thank you for your comment. I appreciate it. Let me say one thing we are hearing from Illinois Empower pilot districts is that they are being deluged by emails and calls from providers. How will providers be matched to schools in the fall? Good question. My understanding is that ISBE is going to be putting together a chart, if you will, that'll be posted online and give folks an opportunity to not only post information about themselves, but be identified based on those standards. So if I'm a school that has identified leadership, for example, as an area I want to focus on, I'll be able to go in and then really drill down on those providers that have been approved by the state board for leadership. And so, of course, we encourage any schools that have had success in these areas and that are designated as Tier 1 or Tier 2 schools to consider serving with their colleagues by providing services, because we all know that we often learn best by folks that have walked in our paths and have found success, rather than sometimes just purchasing systems from outsiders, although not to dismiss the systems that many of our outsiders can provide, but having the option of working collegially with some of our other partners, I think, is a great benefit in this new system. What are career development experiences? That is a good question, Kelly, and I will pose that to ISBE because I don't have a good clarification on that at this point. Any other questions that folks might have? I really appreciate the fact that you stayed with us. There's a lot of information, as you can tell, and our goal in offering the webinar today was to try to get this information and to build a base level of knowledge for our stakeholders as this information has been rolling out to the superintendents. As I mentioned, we're putting together a course that we should have available by May 1st for principals and other stakeholder groups to direct their teachers and staff members to in Ed Leaders Network to help really grow the understanding and base knowledge. We are very, very happy that ISBE allowed the associations to be part of rolling this information out. So very excited that the ROEs and IAASE and ISA have been involved in this process, and look forward to being part of rolling out next steps as well. It looks like we've got one more question. How will that work for Tier 1 and Tier 2 schools if they become a provider? Will they be paid as part of the system? Patty, great question. I have that same question and I don't know the answer to that. So I will roll that up to ISBE and be sure that we have included that in the FAQ document. Let's see, regarding absenteeism, do field trips count as excused absences and thus count against? No, Kelly, it's a great question. We believe, based on our understanding, that field trips would be considered an attendance, a school attendance. So, and college visits, we are unclear at this point. That question came up last week when I was presenting in Springfield. So we're waiting on the answer to college visits as well. Certainly, those things are very instrumental in what happens in schools, and we don't want to at least from the association's perspective, we don't want to hurt students by participation in those events. So we'll try to get more clarification for you and include that in the FAQ. Running through, looking to see. You mentioned a new science assessment. When is the new test scheduled for implementation, Catherine? Good question. It's my understanding that the RFP will be released, if it hasn't already been, for a new science assessment. This is my opinion, that the plan is to have the new science assessment ready for implementation next school year. But that is my opinion, so I will try to get clarification from ISBE on whether or not that will be delivered next year. I know certainly all of you on the call have been impacted by the ISA that was administered over the last couple of years. I also was a school district administrator for the last 4 years, so was involved in the implementation of that assessment and the long wait for the results. So what tool are Title I schools to use now that they cannot access Rising Star? Dara, good question. We believe Rising Star will still be available and that schools may choose to use the new rubric as their school improvement framework. What we do know is if you are a Tier 4 school, you will be required to use the new rubric as your framework for school improvement. So using Rising Star is not an option if you're in Tier 4. What we've seen, and this is just an anecdotal conversation as I've talked with folks that are out in the field and superintendents and a few principals that have been in attendance at these sessions, day-long sessions, is that folks are appreciating having access to the new quality framework and to the draft rubric because many are starting to have conversations about that this spring, as well as to simply just educate themselves more about what the new framework looks like and what the new indicators look like to actually build out a story in preparation for the release of designations for schools. Todd asks, will the Rising Star data be transferred to Illinois Empower system? Great question, Todd, my former colleague. I do not have the answer to that, so I will pass that on to ISBE to see if there is any type of crosswalk that will happen between Rising Star and the new rubric. Looking like I'm kind of reading through to see how is proficiency measured, Dawn Van Camp. The proficiency, which will make up 10%, well, actually 20% for elementary schools in the first year, is based on math and English language arts. And then science, beginning next year, proficiency will also be measured in science. It'll be based on meets or exceeds those particular cut scores, much like you experienced under AYP. But remember that proficiency is just one of the many indicators and certainly isn't the overpowering indicator that it was in the past. Let me see if I see any other questions here. Appreciate your patience as I kind of scroll along. Drew, I don't know if you see any other questions or have popped any up to the top. Looks like most of the questions I think we've addressed, but if you have additional questions, please feel free to add them in. Again, we expect to offer more information as the months roll along, working with ISBE to be a partner in trying to get this information out. Of course, Illinois Principals Association is committed to trying to get as much information out as quickly as possible to our building leaders who have a great stake in this new system, as designations will be determined by school. And so we want you folks, we want to have this information available to you as quickly as possible so that you can help build that story of success in your schools. And, you know, as you look at these new indicators and look at what your school is already doing how your school is doing really great things in some of these areas, you know, you have to some degree, you have to build out that story, because that story is what your stakeholders really understand and value from you, more so than some type of ranking that appears in the newspaper for one day. So we encourage you to begin to build out your message that you can share with your parents and your community. I'm looking at a couple more questions that have just come in. The growth model is based on the previous year's scores. Yes, Mike, that is correct. The growth metric will be based on regressing the current year's scores with the previous year's scores. And Dr. Gata does a fabulous job in that 10-minute video, so I definitely encourage you to watch that. He reiterates in his presentation that there are still things that are unknown about that simple linear regression model that is under development, but he uses some great visuals to describe what that might look like. Instead of comparing cohort growth, yes, so that is correct. It is based on individual student growth. So, and again, that, so as your follow-up question, based as compared to cohort growth, yes, that's correct. It's based on individual student growth year over year. And then what resources will we be passing along, Bob, after the webinar? We'll be sharing out the PowerPoint from today. I'll also be sharing out the rubric. And as I've been thinking about it, I think I will also share out with you the overview of the quality framework. I think that would be extremely beneficial to you as well. And perhaps the flow chart. So one of the screenshots in the presentation was a flow chart that helps walk you through the tier designations. And we have that as a standalone document. So I will also share that out because I think that will be of benefit to you. One of the things that I really can't overstate is the importance of pulling out that section 4 of the ESSA plan. When the team of approximately 12 stakeholders came together at the beginning of developing this training, we were asked to read the ESSA plan not once, but 6 times. And I can tell you, as of today, I've probably read it 10 times, in particular that section 4, because the footnotes in that section are almost as important as the narrative. So when we talked about unpacking the Common Core standards, you almost have to go through the process of unpacking these indicators as well. So hopefully that addresses that question. Let's see, we've got a few others that have popped in here. Really appreciate that. Looks like Ralph, great job, Sue. You may want to iterate, yeah, great suggestion. So Ralph is encouraging me to reiterate what should you be doing after today's presentation. So my recommendation would be twofold. One, to gather the materials that I will share out after today's presentation and either share these out with your entire staff or bring your teacher leadership team together and begin to have a conversation about these, and then share out the opportunity to participate in what'll likely be a 2-hour professional development course with teachers later this spring. As you look at the quality framework and as you look at the indicators, really start to jot down either mentally or on paper, what are the things that you're currently doing well? What are the things that you know are going to be hot button points for you? Because that's really where the starting point begins. You need, and I really applaud you for being part of this presentation today, having an understanding, a basic understanding before this goes to the media will help you be proactive in getting the story out about the great things that are happening in your school before you're reacting to folks asking where you are. And just to kind of check in, see if there are any others. Okay, I apologize if I missed your question. There's a pretty long list here, but again, I will grab all of these questions, excuse me, put them in an FAQ. What we've had, we also have an FAQ of questions that have been asked during the superintendent presentations. So what my plan is to combine all of those questions, because there are some questions that have come up in the superintendent's presentations that will apply equally to those of you that have been participating today. So I have my contact information on the screen. You've got my email address. Please feel free to email me. Let me know if you have any questions. We've done a few presentations around the state in person to